Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Transfer Portal Podcast presented by No Context CFB. We finally got college football back. Week 0 is in the books. Every game is now in the past. Have a lot of games to talk about, a lot of moments to talk about. Obviously, there will be one we kind of favor a little bit because it was the biggest game, but we will talk about every game as much as we can. My name is Andrew Wilson. Alongside me, Karan, Leica, Liam. How are we doing today, gentlemen?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Great to be back. Thank you for having me as always.
Good.
Which is ironic because you were just talking about how sad you were that you lost your bet the other night, Liam.
It's okay. It's okay. It's all good. I know you're down worse.
Yeah, my first ever game bet, and we'll just start with this because I'm still upset. My first ever game bet was UNC minus 34.5. I got it before the whole Florida A&M academic ineligibility thing where it became a minus 45 for North Carolina. If you bet that game, I'm so sorry that you had to go alongside that with me, but it was just so sad because that first quarter, UNC could not really get anything going. Drake May was in his first quarter of playing college football. He was still getting there. I was fine with that because I knew that, sometimes these large spread games, a bit rough in the first half, but that second half is where they really get going because you see those lesser tier teams have less depth than the Power 5 teams. That first half, though, it wasn't about depth. It was about scheme, especially on defense for North Carolina. When I tell you that their defense could probably not stop a dig route from a toddler, I'm not overreacting. It was that sad. I could see Gene Chizik in the press box just absolutely going at his guys, even though no one could hear him except for his coaching staff. And I kind of agree with him, but I'm also like, dude, that's your defense. Like, you can't be, oh my gosh, I hate these players. They suck. This is my scheme. It's your scheme at the end of the day. You couldn't stop Florida A&M. Now, respect to Florida A&M, before I keep on going on this rant, they played a heck of a ball game for a team with losing so much. No Isaiah Land, who was their best player. They played super well. But North Carolina, that defense is atrocious. I don't care how they played in the second half. You gave up, I believe it was 24 points to Florida A&M. I hope you're ready for App State next week because that's going to be a lot more than 24 points if you keep playing like that. And then going into that second half, Drake May, he gets that offense rolling. They have a bunch of young running backs. Obviously, Josh Downs out wide. He's a stud wide receiver. And then we get to the final drive of the game. UNC had just forced, a bunch of turnovers. They got some points off of those. And all I need I want to say it was like 8 minutes left, 6 minutes left, something in that range. I need 3 points. They're up 32. It is 56-24, if I remember correctly. They have one of the first plays, a breakout run. They're running the ball so well in this second half. They have a bunch of great running backs that I know Leica's a big fan of one of them. And then they get down to like the 20. They struggle a little bit. On a 4th and 5, they convert, get inside the 10. I'm thinking, okay, I was stressed so long because it was like a 10-point game at one point. Now all I need is a few points, right? Even if they don't get a bunch of points here, most likely they take their 3. They get down to the 1. And then they have, the first little thing, a touchdown. Woohoo. I'm going crazy. I'm looking at my monitor and I'm going crazy. And then I see a little bit of laundry on the field. I'm like, crap. No. Because I'm going through the emotions at this point. I'm probably being rude to my friends. To them, I apologize. They call the touchdown back. Knee was down on the 1. Okay. With how they've been running, we can get through this. Then they get in. Woohoo. I go crazy for the second time. Well, laundry, holding, go back 10 yards. And I'm like, okay, they're doing well on offense. I can trust them. Well, I can't trust them when they don't snap the freaking ball. Delay of game. Accepted. Mac Brown simultaneously chews out the clock and chews my bread out of my hand.
Why? Why did that rant take 10 minutes?
That did not take 10 minutes.
It felt like it.
Oh, well.
It felt like it.
It felt like 3 hours to me. I'm just so, it's wild that my first ever game bet is going to end up on Scott Van Pelt's Sports Center as a bad beat. It's going to be the first one he talks about, and he's going to be like, man, if you got UNC minus 34.5, I feel bad for you, my man. And I'm like, I feel bad for myself too.
I'm glad that betting sports went the way you envisioned it.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, respect to the gambling industry because it made me entertained watching North Carolina versus Florida A&M for 4 quarters. Now, I will say it did not end my way, but I had fun doing it. Now, sure, did it cost me money? Yes, but at the end of the day, you wager what you wager, you lose what you lose, you win what you win. So enough talking about my bets. Let's talk about some actual college football. We're going to start off. What surprised you most on Saturday? We'll start with Karan.
I thought Illinois looked really good against Wyoming. Not many people had eyes on that game, but I mean, I don't know if it's Wyoming being bad, which I predicted in the Mountain West preview that they would be bad. But I mean, their quarterback went 5 for 20, 30 yards, 1 interception. Illinois' defense suffocated those guys. And I mean, I don't know. I think Illinois can be a decent team this year. Tommy DeVito hasn't had the greatest college football career to this point, but I think he can definitely turn it around and they can make some noise this year.
I think what surprised me the most has to be two things, and they're both in the Conference USA. Charlotte getting absolutely decimated by FAU and their defense still looking every bit as terrible as it did last year, if not worse, after all I heard about all offseason was things are changing on defense. New D coordinator, new players in, more experience, things are going to change. Like it was an abomination from the get-go. And then again in the Conference USA, UTEP getting slaughtered by North Texas. I thought was really surprising. UTEP was not able to ride off their momentum from last season, go out there, falter on offense. Had some good-looking players like Mr. Tyron Smith. Aside from that, it was a really disappointing effort from both them and Charlotte.
For me, it's the fact that Vanderbilt looked like a team that plays college football. About 63 points going all the way 30 million time zones west to Hawaii and putting up 63 points behind Mike Wright going for 163 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground, and then 2 more passing touchdowns through the air. Vanderbilt's defense was suffocating. I know it's week 0 against Hawaii, but the fact that they looked like a team that plays football is pretty impressive, at least for week 0.
And I want to go back to a topic Liam talked about, and I'm going to go about the positive side. FAU looks incredible. FAU, without Johnny Ford, he was a late scratch. FAU looked phenomenal, especially on offense. And Kosi Perry looked great. I just think that this FAU Owls team, they lost one of their best players right before the game, and they still slaughtered Charlotte. This was a game a lot of people had Charlotte spread because they said these are 2 very close teams. Liam talked about it. Charlotte defense was supposed to be a lot better, and unfortunately wasn't. But the fact that FAU was that efficient and that prolific on offense, it's just a great sign for people who believe FAU to be a sleeper in the CUSA, as they said on the CUSA podcast, that you should check out on the Transfer Portal YouTube channel.
And also, sorry, really quickly, as you talked about with North Carolina's defense, the pass defense for Charlotte, us 4 could have gone out there as FAU's top 4 receivers and shredded. We all could have had 100 receiving yards with these. It was an absolute embarrassment that was displayed on Charlotte's defense from start to finish. I'm sorry, but when you talk up your defense to be looking the right direction, and that's the product you put out there, is really worrisome.
It is very, very worrisome for a team that a lot of people see as, a little bit more of the mid-pack of this USA, but that mid-pack is still very good in a deeper conference. Now we got to go to talking about teams to players. 1 player performance shout out from each of us.
So I'm going to go with Northwestern's Peter Skoronski, who might be one of, if not the best college football player in the nation right now. He had 39 pass blocking snaps, 0 sacks allowed, 0 pressures allowed, and Pro Football Focus had him at nearly a 90 grade. I mean, that's pretty much a perfect game as far as I'm concerned. He did everything he could, and Northwestern came out on top. So yeah, I think Skoronski is going to make some noise this year and could be a top 10, top 5 pick come April.
He was excellent, man, and not allowing a QB hit was super impressive from him. And that entire Northwestern offense line. I'm going with Ty James, wide receiver at Mercer. In the first half alone, he put 5 catches for 192 and 3 touchdowns. That's 38.4 yards per catch for the Georgia transfer, who's now a redshirt sophomore. Touchdown grabs of 29, 43, and 90 yards. Mercer's the number 23 FCS team in the country. going to be going up a few spots, possibly with some more really good games. Ty James might look the part, maybe a guy that we keep an eye on.
I'm a North Carolina native, so I think it would be very fitting if I went with Charlotte, North Carolina native Drake May for the North Carolina Tar Heels in his first college start. 5 touchdowns, no interceptions. Spread the ball out to his receivers. Josh Downs got a couple touchdowns. Yes, Carolina's defense did not look great against FAMU, but for Drake May to come in and replace a great player who's now in the NFL and start his college career off right with 5 touchdowns is very great for him. But of course, like Andrew mentioned earlier, the challenge steps up next week when they play App State in Boone. But for his first college start, Drake May being the first Carolina quarterback to throw for 5 touchdowns in his first start is very impressive.
And I'm going to talk about a guy I never thought I would say this is my spotlight player of the week in a review pod. Ryan Helinski, the quarterback for Northwestern, he completed 27 of his 38 passes, 314 yards, 2 touchdowns, no picks. A lot of people said when ranking Big Ten quarterbacks, he's probably bottom 3. He's like in that same tier as Spencer Petras. And now it's disrespectful to put him next to Petras because Petras could not dream of doing what he just did. Talking about Helinski, of course. I mean, not only was Helinski efficient, but he was making tight window throws. He had a few nice ones on the sideline. He never forced anything that he didn't think he could make. He had a lot of talented throws. He had that deep, I want to say it was a slot fade in the second quarter. That was a nice touchdown. Just a lot of great throws from Helinski. It's something I never thought I'd say this year, but you know what? Give credit where credit is due. Helinski's one of the biggest reasons Northwestern won that game. And also, as Karan talked about, Skoronski, of course, was able to stay protected. I don't think he got hit more than once. He might have gotten hit once or pressured once, but he definitely didn't get sacked.
He took 0 sacks and 1 QB hit, if that.
Yeah. I want to say that's correct. But yeah, just an overall domination on offense from Northwestern. Speaking of that Northwestern game, we need to talk about their opponent. Of course, this was the biggest game of the week. Nebraska versus Northwestern. High expectations for Nebraska, low ones for Northwestern. And of course, as the great Michael Scott said, oh, how the turntables. Nebraska is now the one with the low expectations and slightly higher expectations for Northwestern. But let's talk about Nebraska for a second. Where do we go? This Nebraska team keeps on showing that they do not deserve the expectations that they are given. Those are completely too high. We need to now set them a more realistic expectation. How many wins do we think they can get this year with how they just performed?
Honestly, I don't even know because they're so hard to gauge week by week that it's really hard to predict. Casey Thompson for like a quarter and a half looked amazing. So maybe he ends up having a strong season, but I mean, ultimately it's been like a lot of the same. So I can't see them being much better than last year. Maybe they get a couple of games going the other way, which was an issue last year, but I think they'll have maybe 1 or 2 more wins than last year. I just don't see them fixing this anytime soon.
And it's like, it's a problem that's kind of impossible to fix. And we've seen that. And a lot of people just kind of keep thinking they're this competitive. They're going to find ways to flip the other side of the coin and come out on top. No, since Scott Frost was hired in 2018, they're 5-21 one-score games. That's not a fluke at this point. When something like this keeps happening, it's going to keep happening. It's happening for a reason. When you're calling onside kicks up 11 in the third quarter in Ireland because you think this is some sick game. You think you're online in the Madden game, could recover a quick onside against an inept offense. Like, what are you doing? Northwestern scores in a minute 16. You let Northwestern's offense get a short field in an 11-point game that was competitive, that Northwestern was already dominating the trenches in. You give them a short field. Their offensive line did work. They scored in a minute 16. You're now in a 3-point game. Your team didn't score the rest of the game. This stuff is going to keep happening. And there's no like weird reasons that we're here where Scott Frost is this bad in one-score games. It's happening because of him. And you can't keep giving him opportunities. He should have 0 opportunity at this school next year if this stuff keeps happening, and will keep happening, because this is Scott Frost football. At this point, this is his brand of football. It's game, competitive, close games, falling short, And that's what you should expect. This is like a 5 or 6 win team, if that. Like, they're bad, and they're going to keep being bad, and they're going to stink in close games.
Honestly, 5 or 6 wins might be generous. I mean, I know on paper their schedule says there's winnable games out there, but I mean, like you said, Liam, I mean, it's a broken record at this point with them in close games, to the point where, like, how are they going to find a way to pull through? I mean, yeah, you got North Dakota next week and Georgia Southern after that. Then you got to run into Oklahoma, who's got big expectations. And honestly, I don't see it getting any better for Nebraska, especially the fact that they were in control of the game. They didn't have to. Frost didn't have to. I know everyone's been talking about the onside kick decision. I was flustered by it when I saw. I was like, "They really going for an onside kick up 11?" And I mean, that's just where the whole complexion of this game and potentially their season changed just off of one decision of that magnitude.
All right, got to prepare for this. Crack my knuckles. Kenzie, if you didn't already turn off the podcast, I would recommend doing it now for what I'm about to do that program. All right, let's start off. Nebraska, you bring in Casey Thompson and you expect what you saw in that first half of the Oklahoma game, but you didn't watch the rest of the season where our good friend Adam Coleman talked about first half Casey Thompson being amazing. You know, he is a dark horse Heisman contender in the first half. In the second half, he is Adrian freaking Martinez. I don't think that's an overstatement. I don't think that's an understatement. I think he is Adrian Martinez. He makes stupid decisions. He makes bad throws. And at the end of the day, he is a quarterback that should touch the field for the first and second half, or first and second quarter, not the second half, and not the third and fourth. I just don't know what is wrong with his second half performance. I don't know if it's some sort of adjustment. Something happens. I don't see players have amazing first half and awful second half. Usually you see differences. You see the reciprocal. You see bad first half adjustments, great second half. And then the pass rush. All I hear this entire offseason is that Nebraska got so much better on defense. Their black shirts are amazing. They're going to have such a great pass rush. They didn't touch the quarterback. They didn't get Helinski down a sack. They got one hit. Oh my gosh, they got one hit. I'm so impressed. They didn't get a sack once against the Northwestern team. We didn't predict to be very good. I'm jumbling my words because that is how just everything is right now. Nebraska fumbling and jumbling and rumbling, not like Chris Berman talking about fullbacks running down the field. No, they're fumbling the season away, and it's week 0. All right. If you keep on doing this, if you keep on saying, oh, it's a one possession game, it's one bounce of the way. That one bounce of the game was decided by Scott Frost saying, I'm going to bounce this ball 10 yards and hope my guys jump on it. Guess what? They didn't. I don't care about the onside kick. This running back was here. This running back was there. I don't care. You're up 11. There's like 9 minutes left in the third quarter. Make Northwestern score on you. Give them a long field. Get them on the 20. Make them score on you. All right? Don't give them 40 yards. Give them 80. Make them show that they deserve the win. Don't give it to them, because that's what you did. You gave it to them.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
And it's just funny to think about. You're playing Northwestern's offense. You're playing in Ireland. For months, we talked up this game and how, these poor residents of Dublin, these poor fans in Ireland are going to watch these two teams put on a punting clinic, field position game. And then he hands them the best field position possible in an 11-point game. It says, here, take the ball, go 40 yards. You're an inept offense. Sure, we could prevent you guys from going 80. There's 40 yards to go downfield and score, and he do it in minutes. Like, it's just remarkable to think about. And also something we didn't talk about, throwing his offensive staff under the bus after the game was also a ridiculous.
I forgot about that one. Well, I'm going to resume my rant. I just needed a second to catch my breath. Thank you for taking over, Lamb. You put Mark Whipple under the bus, the guy that you just hired, by the way. Do you think that putting the guy that you just hired, you sold out your last year's staff for one more chance in Nebraska? One more. I want one more chance. I want this to be my school. I want to bring a new staff in here. You bring that new staff and you immediately throw them under the bus for actually coaching a great game. Mark Whipple coached a great game for Nebraska. He's one of the biggest reasons they were in that game. You throw him under the bus when you are the reason you lost that game. You lost it, Scott You lost it, okay? I'm up in your grill right now. You lost that game. You know it. You think that throwing other guys under the bus is going to make you look better. No, it makes you look more weak, which is what we know you are, all right? We talked about, like I talked about the non-conference schedule, Georgia Southern, North Dakota, Oklahoma. Oklahoma's going to be a tough game for them in Lincoln. The 3-game stretch I'm more interested in is Indiana, Rutgers, Purdue. If they don't win all 3 of those games, and there's a special reason why I bring those 3 up. Rutgers and Indiana, you should beat easily. I think those are going to be the 2 worst teams in the conference. But if you drop any of those, all 3 of those games are after October 1st. Why is that date so important, you may ask? October 1st is when Scott Frost's contract buyout goes from 15 mil to 7.5 mil. If he loses any of those games, he should be stripped of all Nebraska logos off his body. He should not be allowed entrance on the Nebraska team bus if it's an away game. He should be locked out of the facilities like when Jamal Adams, as my oar falls over. I don't know how he would have a job if he loses any of those games. If he loses those games and he's not fired, I've really got to start expecting that there's some sort of blackmail going on because he does not deserve to have a head coaching job in Lincoln, Nebraska if he loses any of those games.
I think the move, you fire him on that October 1st date when the buyout goes down, and you let Landry Clark of Friday Night Lights be your new head coach.
Don't disagree.
Thank you. For those who don't know, the actor, Jesse Clemens.
I was also going to bring up, when have you ever heard Northwestern's offense getting 528 total yards? Like, that's some coaching malpractice of some sort. Because, like, we know Northwestern is this team that Pat Fitzgerald's identity is we're going to run the football, play good defense, be disciplined. And, I mean, it's got them a couple Big Ten West titles over the last few years. But I know Helinski played great. Don't get me wrong. But allowing 300-plus yards of through the air to Northwestern is fireable offense territory. And I know it's week 0, but that's a huge red flag for Nebraska. So they're going to have to really tighten up these next couple weeks before they face the Sooners.
And look, before we move on topics, while Helinski was still good and he did exactly what was asked of him, he was very mature in that game and everything. This was still a staff at Northwestern that wasn't very confident in him, as evidenced by how often they were running on 3rd and long. Nebraska lost to that team that was content with getting 3 points over and over. It was playing 1940s-esque football.
It took the ball out of Helinski's hands in a lot of those crucial 3rd downs, which I was like, does Northwestern want to win this game?
Yeah, but they would whatever. We should move on topics, truthfully. Nebraska doesn't deserve the rest of this. We have a whole season to slander Scott.
Well, we don't know if we have a whole season. I don't think he'll make it that whole season. A few more weeks. But let's go to the other side field. We've been talking so negative. Let's lighten the mood. Let's talk positive. We already talked a decent amount about Northwestern. Let's just give some final thoughts about how did Northwestern play? What's your takeaway on them? How positive do you think that this game was for them?
I mean, I'm not sure, honestly, because as we've basically just went over for the last 20 minutes, Nebraska threw that game away more than Northwestern wanted, in my opinion. But at the same time, Northwestern, their protection was amazing in terms of pass protection. If they can get that every game, Helinski's going to have a nice season. They can definitely pass the ball more than they were comfortable with early. But at the same time, I mean, they're not going to get that big break where they're basically handing the ball ever again, pretty much. So I'm not sure. I think Northwestern's a pretty average team. They're not as good as we've seen them be some years, but I think they're better than they were last year. And I think they could definitely make some noise this year as a upper half team.
Yeah, I would completely agree. They're average. I mean, they are kind of just what they are. Like what we saw is what we're going to get all year. They're nothing special or anything. The only special guy is Mr. Skoronsky. I mean, what a player that kid is. Yeah. And you really just look at the work that they did in the trenches was an absolute masterclass. They schemed. Their blocking was incredible from start to finish. Nebraska's defense looked slow. It looked lethargic. It looked lost. They were just running in to Northwestern offensive linemen over and over again. The whole line played great for the Wildcats. Peter Skoronsky was creating gaps larger than the talent gap between Bishop Sycamore and IMG Academy. It was an absolute masterclass from Northwestern's offensive line. And that's one thing that we can really look at down the road and say they're competing in games over and over again because of what they're doing on the offensive side while in the trenches.
And if they, to piggyback off that, if their O-line is continuing to block well, protect well, Evan Hull and Cam Porter will have a lot of running lanes throughout the season, and those are going to be their guys, their main bell cows in the run game. And that's how Pat Fitzgerald, like I said, Pat Fitzgerald likes to win games. They're going north and south, hat on hat, physical, tough on both sides of the ball. And honestly, after their non-conference, I mean, they start with Penn State and Wisconsin, so those will be two really big tests before going down the road and playing Ohio State in November. So honestly, if they can get through these next three, Duke, Southern Illinois, and Miami of Ohio, that would be a really good sign for Northwestern going into conference play. And I think they could shock one or two if they can play a complete game of football. Defensively, might got to work some things out, but offensively, if they stay true to their identity, I mean, they're going to be a tough team to beat every game, especially when you're playing those 11 a.m. kickoffs in Chicago.
Yeah, on that gross grass. Ugh.
And with about 10 people there, 10 Northwestern fans at least, you'll probably have more fans as a traveling team.
There'll be a lot of like celebrities there that went to Northwestern.
I think they would rather just watch it on TV. They've been to the field. I don't know if I want to go there. But I do want to bring up a name that you talked about, Evan Hull. If you know me, I'm from Minnesota. I'm going to talk up a Minnesota guy for a second. Stud, absolute stud from Maple Grove, Minnesota. Amazing wrestler, might I add. He was, I believe, 4-time letter wrestler. You talked about Pat Fitzgerald wants to win North-South. Evan Hull is the complete compass because he can destroy you north-south. He can power through you, but he can also move laterally east-west. It's such an interesting topic talking about guys like Evan Hull, and Karan brought up earlier Chase Brown with Illinois. This next tier of Big Ten running backs, we always talk about the Travions, the Moes, the Braylons, the Blake Corums, even though he shouldn't be in that tier, but that's a completely different topic. We always talk about those top guys because those are the lead candidates for the Doak Walker, but we don't talk about these guys, Chase Brown and Evan Hull, who are still very talented running backs. And I think if you put them in any other conference, we're talking about them as top 3 or 4 backs in that conference. And I think that Evan Hull got his respect that he deserved for the last year. He's going to get it this entire year. He got it this week. I'm just happy he got it. So he is a player. Shout out Maple Grove, Minnesota. They produce some talent out there. But I promise we are most likely done talking about Northwestern Nebraska. This is a week 0 preview or review, not a review of one game. So let's move on. Vanderbilt. What the freaking heck? Why did you play like a football team? That's not the norm. That's not what you're supposed to do. You played like a football team. You're supposed to make us laugh. You're supposed to give no context, some weird screenshots that we all laugh at. This is not a football team. This is a mean team. Why'd you play like one? In fact, you made Hawaii look like the mean team. What the heck happened with Vanderbilt this week?
I mean, I think Hawaii is the meme team. They looked awful. And I mean, I think a lot of people predicted that when they hired Timmy Chang. It's going to be a uphill climb. But that transition when they gave up the touchdown were literally like they just forgot there was a receiver out there and he was wide open. They give up that touchdown. Then their offense gets the ball, fumble, touchdown. I mean, that was one of the worst like replay sequences I've ever seen in college football. Those guys are bad. Braden Shager's probably not at quarterback. Joey Allen didn't look much better. I mean, Hawaii's going to be really bad this year, and I think that's part of the issue with hiring a guy with absolutely no coaching experience. The culture is probably going to be up going into future years, but this year and probably next year they're going to be terrible.
I think that's pretty well said, but just going to speak to Nebraska, to Vanderbilt. Golly, I guess I still want to talk about Nebraska. Going to speak to Vanderbilt, an actual football team that looks like they have a good brand of football. we saw Vanderbilt display a brand of football, like a legit brand of football. They had guys dedicated to blocking downfield. On Mike Wright's 87-yard touchdown run, what did you see? The tight end has an elite block all the way to the sideline, paving the way, and then a receiver comes up and pops a kid's head off. Like, it was just a good brand of football from Vandy the entire game. They're running the ball super well. They had guys on defense that were committed to just about doing everything, extra help and coverage, making tough tackles and everything, getting after a quarterback. Like, I think Clark Lee, look, they're not going to be the best program in the country. We know that. That was a ridiculous statement. I'm sorry, Andrew. They're not going to be the best program in the country.
I'm shocked.
As much as it looks to say.
Yes. As much as it looks like, because they looked every part of an actual SEC team. It's at least very promising to see that brand of football, to see what Lee is building. It's a complete culture change. It truly, from last season, this does not look like the same team in the slightest. I'm very excited to see what they can do. Just like win some games we don't expect them to win. It'd be great. And, you start your season strong with an absolute demolition on the island with a lot of people watching a game that they would never watch in week 1 or week 2. It was a good showcasing of what Lee is building.
It was truly a game for college football sickos in Hawaii. Like I mentioned off the top, Mike Wright is so fast. I mean, this guy, he can do it with his legs, he can do it through the air. And maybe a monster game from him could spring an upset here or there. And of course, Max Worship on defense also played very well. They got Elon, team from North Carolina, FCS, next week. And then they start to run a massive gauntlet. They're going to play Wake Forest. Who knows what's going on with their quarterback situation, of course. Northern Illinois, always quality. Out of the MAC, and then it's Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia to start their SEC play. So I want to hold my judgment of Vanderbilt, but it is very promising to see them play so well, and hopefully Coach Lee and the Commodores have a really good season in a challenging SEC as always.
Would we say it would be an overstatement if I said that Vanderbilt could catch an SEC team that's not named Missouri?
Now you guys thinking, man. Now you guys thinking.
I mean,
yeah, but who though? Because you look at their schedule. Look at their.
Okay, can I say a team?
What?
Like I said, I think that this could be a team that has a surprise upset, and I think Ole Miss is kind of getting a little overhyped right now. People think that they could be a repeat 10-win team. I disagree. I'm really concerned about that quarterback battle. Jackson Dart hasn't outright murdered Luke Altmaier, which is a little concerning. I think Zach Evans is very good, but what if everything doesn't gel? What if everything gels for Vanderbilt? They're not going to be a team that's favored against anybody, but if they're going to pull one against a team now not named Missouri, I would expect it to be Ole Miss.
At the end of the day, I still need to see what they do at Northern Illinois. I need to see that first because that is a significantly tougher game than what they just had against Hawaii on the road. That Northern Illinois game is going to be pretty dang telling. And then the SEC schedule just doesn't favor them at all. They have tough games at home. They have tough games on the road, obviously, but the winnable games are all on the road. And I'm obviously stretching when I say winnable because I'm talking about Mizzou and maybe Kentucky's the team that I'd say maybe if they're at home and could catch them on an off night, that's the team I'd say they could beat. But that's on their schedule. But I don't know, man. They have so much work to still do. It was just a very promising glimpse into what Lee's future at Vandy could be.
I want to bring up one more thing. This Hawaii team, Karan said they are awful. They're disgusting. I think they're going to be a bottom 5 team in the country. Hawaii is setting up the Sickos Bowl. This is the Sickos game of the week for the regular season. Hawaii going to the Fighting Jerry Kills to play New Mexico State. I think that could honestly be the worst game of the season. It should be on. It should be on ABC. It should have Kirk Herbstreit calling the game because it is that bad. It is that historically bad. We don't know what the score will be. It could be 70-70 or 0-2. I don't know. It's going to be disgusting, which you know what that means. We all need to watch it.
I'll tell you, they ain't scoring 70s.
Oh, Hawaii's definitely not scoring 70. It's probably closer to 2-0.
Oh, yeah.
Like that first half of Nevada and Mexico State.
That over-under is going to be in the low 40s.
I think a game like that, I could predict a final score of 6-4. And I only say that because in North Carolina high school football this past week, that is a score that actually happened.
Scoregami, man. Get that 1-point safety.
A true scoregami of epic proportions in North Carolina high school football. Just as a side note, near where I live, played a game that was 6-4. It was 4-0 at the half.
I think some people have different.
No joke.
I think some people have different meanings of epic proportions. Maybe a little bit less than epic, but yeah, Vanderbilt played well. Hawaii didn't. I think we know a decent amount about those two teams, but of course, Vandy has an SEC schedule, and Hawaii, you really suck. You really suck. Let's move on to another team that we expected to really suck, but actually showed some signs of life. I said that this team isn't going to go down without a bark and a bite. UConn, they actually kind of impressed against Utah State. You know, Nathan Carter, he was phenomenal. Is this a sign of positive things to come for the Jim Moore era?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to be that guy that's like negative on every single one of these segments, but like we talked about this on the Mountain West preview as well. Utah State's defense is like atrocious, and it's kind of sad because that offense is really good. Logan Bonner's a really good quarterback, but they're going to get flamed like every game. They're going to have to outscore every team they play. And if you're giving up 245 rushing yards to UConn, like I don't know if I can really say like, yeah, UConn looked pretty good, but at the same time, that's really a Utah State like blemish as far as I'm concerned.
It was a pitiful display of football out of Utah State, and we saw the incredible story what happened last year. Their defense, as you mentioned, was still bad last year. Their offense was just unstoppable in so many ways, and then there were just really strange offensive instances in that first half when they were struggling. When Levi Williams, Wyoming transfer, comes in on 4th and short and airmails a ball to a wide open pass catcher in the flat, like, what are you doing? And we know that you were a QB1 Wyoming. You could have transferred to a school where you'd actually start. You have to go to the school where your girlfriend is, and it didn't look like you were practicing your craft much on the field, man. Like, you got to make that throw, and that was just
he's got his priorities set up.
Clearly does. Like it was just so bad in so many ways. But I'll talk UConn up. Like, they competed a lot more. The spread was 27.5, 28. They competed a lot more than anyone expected. They had a 14-0 lead early. They were running with a purpose. Their offensive line was getting after it. Their defense was flying to the ball. It looked like, and let's not forget, the whole defense coordinator situation was kind of weird with them too, but it looked like a team that was committed to winning, and we haven't seen that. And it's so weird to talk about Vandy and UConn in that respect, and they have a very tough schedule. We'll see what they could do. You mentioned that Hawaii, New Mexico State sickos game. UConn's got FIU and UMass on their schedule. Some extreme sickos games there, regardless of if we think FIU takes the next step or not. Like, I don't know, though. Well, I think knowing what Moore was able to do at UCLA, we were soft before, weren't very soft after. At the end of his tenure, pretty soft. UConn didn't look soft yesterday, though.
And playing Utah State is a quality opponent. I think that was a good litmus test for them to see what they have to do moving forward to, improve every game and try and get the program, because they're not even building from the ground. Like they're like below ground zero. Like that's how bad UConn football has been for a while, from both Randy Edsall eras to now and all this. I mean, it's good. It's good to see UConn get a game where they compete well on the road against a very quality team. Their schedule lines up Central Connecticut State and Syracuse with Dino Babers kind of on the hot seat, needing to turn that program around. Could be some games where maybe they could get to 1 or 2 W's. You never know. But for the Jim Moore era, 0-1 is 0-1, but this looks more like a team that knows how to play football. So that's a good sign for going forward.
Yeah, and with UConn, 0-1 isn't really 0-1. It's 0-0. It's when you get the one win that feels like 7. So I think it's a tremendous start. I mean, Karan talked about their defense is disgustingly awful, but I thought Nathan Carter still played very well. It wasn't even just the numbers he got. It was how he played, what he showed. I think, he had 9.5 yards per carry. You can put as much to that as Utah State's defense being bad all you want. You still got to give him props for taking the 9.5 every time he touched the ball. But man, the thing I'm worried about with UConn is their passing offense. They suck. Like, I apologize if anyone is listening that is at that UConn program. You need to get better, please. I mean, Taquan Roberson, I believe he just went down with an ACL injury, so he's no longer going to be throwing the ball.
That does not help.
Also lose their leading receiver from last year in Keelan Marion to a broken collarbone. Morris says he might be back this year, but
collarbones are also a very weird injury. Some people have much shorter timelines. Some people have much longer ones. But UConn, if they go up against a team that has a good or half decent run defense, please smash their team total under on whatever sports book you choose. They will not be able to throw the ball. If they had a completion percentage on the year of under 50%, I'd be like, man, I'm surprised it's that high. But the defense, I thought they looked good. They started off very well. I think that this is a good start, but of course, 0-1 is still 0-1, like I said. And look, it's UConn at the end of the day. We can't be expecting them to beat Utah State. We should be expecting them to beat Central Connecticut State, play Syracuse tough, because Syracuse is not a very good team outside of Sean Tucker and Garrett Williams. UConn, solid start, but let's build off it. Let's not, celebrate. Let's go. We only lost by whatever we did. Be like, we lost by that much. Let's get that much better into the next week. So UConn, you looked good. Let's talk about some teams that looked concerning. Outside of Nebraska, we talked so much about them. Let's throw them out the window, right? What team outside of Nebraska was the most concerning?
I gotta keep it with Utah State. I mean, Nebraska, it's kind of a lot of the same we've seen in the past. Like Hawaii, we knew they'd be bad. Utah State is a legit competitor in the Mountain West, and they do have the offense and the quarterback to do it. But that defense is not they're not there, and they just keep getting worse. So I don't know. I just don't know if I can go into the rest of the season thinking, okay, Utah State, their defense sucks, but they're going to outscore all these offenses if they're that bad, like against UConn. So I don't know. The only real contender that really I saw struggle was Utah State. And so that has to be the most concerning in my book.
For someone who had high hopes for Charlotte, they were the most concerning team to me. You get up 7-0 after a ridiculous touchdown grab from Dubose to set them up for success. 52-yard rush from McCannon right after for an FAU touchdown. You're 7-7. You're in a 10-7 game, and Reynolds, you're a fifth-year quarterback that on 3rd and 2 doesn't throw the ball away, takes a sack, hurt your left shoulder off of it. Team was cooked right after that. I thought it was really concerning for Charlotte. Dubose might have had a touchdown. He had a very poor drop, uncharacteristic drop. Why he wasn't getting the ball right after that, though, is also concerning. The receivers had plenty of drops in addition to him. Elijah Spencer had 3 or 4 awful games for their WR3 for a team that we thought had a really strong receiving core, and they still do with their top 2. But when Spencer struggles like that as your 3, really concerning. And then, as I spoke before about defense, I'll keep it short. I could have had 100 receiving yards against their DBs yesterday. Like it was an absolute atrocity of a product on the defense side of the ball.
although they had a really good offensive showing, specifically UNC's defense concerned me against FAMU. Like we said, like everyone said at the beginning, Florida A&M, all things considered, played their tails off. They were in a 2-score game going to the fourth quarter on the road against a high-quality ACC opponent. I think we can agree on that. But ultimately, Carolina's secondary was getting torched in the first half, especially. And I know Andrew doesn't want to relive this, but not having Tony Grimes, who's one of your top recruits, get hurt early didn't really help that. But Jeremy Musa was really taking it to him in the first half, and FAMU just gave him a game. It's good that they responded the way they did in the second half, especially in the third quarter. But UNC's secondary has got to get a lot better and a lot better fast because of the teams that they're going to play. App State, Notre Dame, like these are going to be high quality opponents coming in this early portion of the schedule. So I would say UNC's secondary, specifically amongst their defense as a whole, I would say.
Okay, I'm going to cheat because my answers were either Charlotte or UNC's defense. So I'll talk a tad bit about both. Charlotte, Liam talked about it, blown coverages, missed tackles. That defense was just very bad to watch. ULA and FAU offense without one of their best players. Looked like the prime Green Bay Packers with Aaron Rodgers, Greg Jennings, Jordy Nelson. And you know what? Add prime Eddie Lacy in there because you talked about McCammon. He was running out of a McCannon. So you know I had to make that pun, Liam. And then going to UNC, look, their secondary did suck. There were also some times where they let FAMU just, get a guy in the A gap running back, and then they just let him get 7 yards. I don't think the rushing stats for FAMU were that great, but there were some snaps where it's like, man, just tackle him. Just push him backwards. They were the ones getting pushed backwards. That defense was soft as Charmin. I don't know what was going on. Thank you, Gene Chizik, for making some sort of a adjustment going into the second half. It wasn't enough for me, but at least you won the game. At least you did all that stuff. Drake May had an amazing game, which we'll talk about him in a little bit. But, man, why? Why me? Why now? But, enough North Carolina. I'm getting sad talking about them. Let's talk about a team that was very impressive. Illinois. Karan talked about them earlier. Beating Wyoming, does that mean anything?
Yes and no. I mean, Illinois looked good. Defense looked really good. Offensively, Chase Brown, Canadian pride, he looked really good. 9 yards per carry, I believe. But at the same time, I mean, Wyoming, after Levi Williams left, last year, they couldn't really throw the ball much either with Levi Williams, but they could at least benefit from his rushing. 5 for 20, 30 yards and an interception is embarrassing. I'm sorry. That's probably the worst quarterback performance in a while, at least this week for sure. But Wyoming looked really bad. Illinois looked really good. I think you can find kind of a middle ground for Illinois there where they're not bad, they're not good, but Wyoming might be a lost cause here. They're going to be a bottom 4 team in the Mountain West, maybe bottom 3, which is where me and Dylan had them in the preview.
Yeah, no disrespect to Illinois. This game could not mean less to me. I just don't care at all. I had, like you and Dylan, I had an extremely low outlook for Wyoming going into the season, and that showed true. This is a team that lost so much talent to the portal. We talk about Williams, Isaiah Naylor also gone, lose a few guys here and there as well, especially on their defense and their secondary. They're just going to be a really bad team. The product that Wyo will not be good this year. This is a complete throwaway year for them. It's just a bad team. So I'm sorry to Illinois, while this does look really, kind of nice on your schedule and everything. It just means absolutely nothing to me.
In the related sense to what Liam just said about what's it called, Florida State. Florida State was a team I don't think we talked about this entire episode yet. They took care of business against Duquesne and had three rushers go over 100 yards, Ward, Benson, and Sofilo. And Jordan Travis still back at quarterback for them. I I would say I would say they were good only because we hadn't said anything bad about them yet. But hopefully it could be something to build on for Florida State. I think they're going to be heavy on the run this year.
Yeah, and going back to Illinois, I agree with Karan and Lamb. This game means quite literally nothing. In a division where you're playing teams like Wisconsin, Iowa, the team in Lincoln, Northwestern, Minnesota, those are going to be much more physical football games where you're not going to be able to put up 38 points. Look, I think the world of Chase Brown. I think he's one of the most underrated players in the country. He can tote the rock with anyone. But this is Wyoming. The Cowboys got off their horse and got kicked in the chin. It was bad. That defense was inept. The quarterback play, like Ron talked about, you might as well have just ran the Army offense, triple option, because you could not pass to save your life, right? I feel bad for Wyoming fans because if that's the product you have to watch this year, man, this year's going to suck for you.
Poor Barrel, man.
Unfortunate.
It's like, I feel bad for Wyoming because it's not their fault, right? Levi Williams had no. Listen, I don't know what's going on in his personal life or whatever. I get maybe his girlfriend's very valuable to him, but he had no reason to transfer, especially after such a strong bowl performance, right? Like, it's just hard to watch that team and think about, like, they could be a bit better with Levi Williams at the very least.
Yeah, and like you could transfer. Your stock was really high after that bowl.
And
Why are you going somewhere where you know you're not starting?
Yeah.
To a divisional opponent, a conference opponent. Like, I'm lost. I don't know. I didn't get it then. I don't get it now.
At least he has a happy girlfriend. That's one plus you can take.
For now.
Look, we predict football games, not whether someone stays with their girlfriend or not. So, because I don't think we're at much of a means to do that. But let's move on topics. Drake May. We talked about North Carolina a lot. I don't know why we're talking about them more. Is Drake May the truth? He was very impressive, especially in that second half for UNC.
Yeah, Drake May, he has all the skills to really run that offense. I mean, the RPO is always going to be a staple of UNC's offense, and he's really running that. For how like inexperienced he is, he really ran that with perfection almost. Like, he's getting the ball out quickly, he's getting it to Josh Downs in space, and additionally, he can move, right? Sam Howell kind of came on at the end. He looked really well as a runner last year. But I mean, Drake May is going to be a great running quarterback for them, and if he can keep like getting his passing down, maybe tone his mechanics a bit better, I think he can be a really good quarterback this year. I had him as a breakout candidate, and I think he could really be like a solid quarterback, much better than people expected.
Completely agree with Karan. What I will say, I'll keep it quickly. These next 4 weeks that they play 3 games in, very telling. You're going at App State, you're going at Georgia State, you're hosting Notre Dame. Let's not overlook Georgia State either. That's a team with so much experience that will compete in the Sun Belt. It's a brutal 3-game stretch for a quarterback who's making his second, third, fourth starts of his career. Let's see what he could do in those games. But, I mean, the future looks bright. He's going to be a guy that a lot of people are talking high about going into 2023.
And I'm not going to say I called it or predicted this. I felt coming out of high school that Drake May was built for playing in the ACC. And he really had a stellar career at Myers Park High School in Charlotte, played extremely well there, and waited his turn behind a great quarterback in Sam Howell, and came out and played great in his first game. The thing that I think will help him is if he gets it to his tight ends, Morales and Bryson Nesbitt, who's another Charlotte kid. And he had a touchdown catch in the game on Saturday night. I think Downs obviously is the go-to guy, but if he can get his 2 tight ends involved, I think the Carolina offense will be tough to stop. And of course, get their running game and all that involved as well. But Drake May, like you said, he took care of business and played really well.
Yeah, a little shaky at the start, but he really got it going. The one thing I do want to say is later in the game, he did have that pretty much ground ball he threw to Josh Downs on the goal line. You got to hit that throw. I don't care if this is your first game, your 500th, you got to hit that throw. That's a walk-in touchdown. You cannot throw that low. You throw that at his helmet so he can catch it right here, and he could probably just reach it over the goal line. That's how close they were. They were literally on the goal line. You got to hit that throw. Otherwise, I thought he looked good. It was a first good game, first good step. You build off it, and you have a successful career. I think he has all the tools he has right now. I think they're all good. He's got a lot of great weapons. As like I talked about the tight ends, the running back room is very good. Josh Downs obviously is a first round potential prospect in the NFL draft this upcoming year. But I think that if Drake May continues to develop and hopefully that garbage defense can get better, they could be a fun. I think that UNC team could be a fun wild card in the ACC. I don't think they're going to win it. I don't think they're going to make the title game, but I think that's a fun wild card team that like, hey, UNC, they're not the best team, but we got to pay attention. We got to bring our A game because we know if we don't, they could knock us off. So going from Drake May, we're going to end this with our first ever dog in them nominations. We're starting this year. We are each going to have a nominee for the Dog in them award. It's specifically said like that, dog. All right. So I don't know if anyone else is going to be able to say it other than me, but you know what? Many people are going to have different definitions of dog. You know, who's got a dog in them? We'll start with Karan. Who is the dog in them nominee for the week for you?
I didn't really plan this out. The one guy that we haven't talked about yet, we just talked about Drake May as a freshman from UNC. Omarion Hampton looked amazing. He had 14 carries, 101 yards, 2 touchdowns, really came on strong. And I think he's going to get even better. Those RPOs are only going to open up lanes. And we see every year with UNC, right? Javonte Williams, Michael Carter, like they keep pumping up these NFL running backs. I think he could definitely be the next one. He looked really good.
I went with Nathan Carter, the running back at UConn. Got that dog in him. I didn't say it like Ann Truster. He's very disappointed. I'm sorry. But 20 carries for 190, really impressive. 9.5 yards per carry, 5'9" running back, showed a lot of promise in week 0. Everyone thought the Huskies were going to be outmatched in this one. They didn't get crushed, and they just weren't. They battled to the very end. He was the focal point of their offense, and he's a big reason why they're in that game, man. He's explosive, fantastic, change the direction, fluid and dynamic. Really good game for Carter.
My man Karan nailed it on the head. It's the Clayton native Omarion Hampton. That's the one I was going to say. A little bit biased because I was lucky enough to cover him through high school for 4 years, and he played great in his first college game. So I'll go with someone different. Zion Webb, quarterback from Jacksonville State, led Jacksonville State to a huge win over Stephen F. Austin. It was an early portion of Saturday and had 3 rushing touchdowns, commanded the offense well. It seemed like they didn't get off to a good start against Stephen F. Austin, but late first half, he kind of got that offense rolling, and the Gamecocks could not be stopped in the second half. The only thing that stopped them was the crazy weather in that area, of course, stopped that game. But their team, Jacksonville State, is a team that will be making a transition to the FBS next season. So I think this year they'd be a really fun team to watch in FCS.
Yeah, you talked about the weather. I was very close to giving my dog nomination to Lightning for trying to cancel like 3 games. But of course, I love football, so I'm Lightning's got that dog in her. Mother Nature has that dog in her. All right, you can't mess with her, otherwise she will take away everything we love, of course, which is college football. But I'm going to go in a more positive direction. Kurt Anderson, the offensive line coach for Northwestern, not only did he dominate a Nebraska defensive line in Dublin, Ireland, that a lot of people talked up, he had a very good offense line. We've talked about Peter Skoronski a lot. I think he's going to end up possibly being a top 5 pick in next year's NFL draft. I think that highly of him. But not only did he dominate Nebraska on the field, he dominated them off the field. After the game, he went on Twitter, and we all know about that whole Nebraska situation. Oh, we're puking 15, 20 times a day. That's how we're treating our guys. That's how much we're training them. Well, he went on Twitter and said, and to think we only had 4 pukes the entire of camp. I mean, just absolute domination, putting salt in the wound, or if you're in Ireland, putting Guinness in the wound. I don't know if that hurts more or less, but you know what? Drown your tears in Guinness, Nebraska fans, because I don't think this is the beginning, or if this is the beginning, I don't think it's the end. There is no end in sight. I'm going to give my dog nomination to Kurt Anderson, and I'll have an honorable mention just because he deserves it. Greg Poland, the offensive lineman for Duquesne. If you were on Twitter, you saw the video. He's 6'8", 285. He just has such a sick fit when he's in his uniform. But of course, I'm sticking with Kurt Anderson. So we've got Kurt Anderson. Who else did everybody say? Because I kind of got caught up there. We have Omarion Hampton.
I said
Nathan Carter.
Zion Webb from Jacksonville State. I also want to add Mike Wright from Vanderbilt as well. Played a hell of a game against Hawaii and completely slipped my mind. We talked about it in the beginning. But yes, this man was looking like Louisville Lamar out here.
Yeah, shout out to that Stephen F. Austin Jacksonville State game, because there's actually a surprising amount of talent out there. I mean, Stephen F. Austin's quarterback, Trey Self, he's a dog for sure. And yeah, that game was pretty good compared to what everyone was expecting.
I was expecting that game.
Well, no, okay, yeah,
so much better.
Yeah,
that
they took it to him in the second half.
Yeah,
Jacksonville
State's
that's where he was good.
Jack State's defense was incredible. Xavier Gibson had a pretty solid showing. Could have been a lot better production wise, but absolutely torched a dude for a touchdown. He's going to be on the NFL draft radar. He's a smaller receiver and everything, but good first showing in your draft year. So
I'll also throw out Malachi Corley. He was a dog. But I think that's where we ended. We've talked about.
We don't want to throw 80 more names out there for dogs.
No, the dog list is a very short list. You got to be a certain type of dog to make it to the nominee list. But I think that's a perfect place to end it. Week 0 is in the books. Week 1 is coming up. Stay tuned for the Week 1 preview podcast that will be coming out later this week. My name's Andrew. Karan, Leica, Liam. Anything else to add?
See you next week.
No.
Great to be back. Great to have college football back, and great to talk about it with 3 really great people.
Yeah, no, it was great. We do not hate Nebraska here at Transfer Portal College Football.
Yes, we do.
Please do not be okay. Some of us do. But
I do.
What about that dog in them?
We hope they're one day good, but currently they just don't have the dog in them.
Nope.
As long as they're in my
gonna
division.
be so much better too. Golly. Week 0. It was cool you were here, but
To be fair,
it was not the best product.
if we add a state to their opponent, they're losing next week. So if you're on YouTube, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, share. If you're on Spotify, Apple, make sure to follow. Do all that stuff everybody else tells you to. Thank you. Have a great day. Be a dog this week.